Tighten up, leaders. Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership, the show that drills into the foundations of what leadership is all about. I'm your producer and co-host, Hali Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duran.
Join us as we sit down with leaders from across the country to mine for nuggets of wisdom.
All right, everyone, welcome into the meeting room. We're here today because we're going to be talking about leadership. This is the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. I'm the host, Billy Duran. I'm in the meeting room today with Hali Gibson, our co-host and producer. Hali, you've dazzled us with your wisdom nuggets, so on the edge of my seat. What is the wisdom nugget of the week?
This one came both internally and externally. A couple of weeks ago, we had one of our leadership development programs, their final presentations. And part of that presentation was, a question on what does respect mean? And I got called on in the meeting, and the first thing that kind of popped into my mind was something that my grandfather always used to say, which was respect is given until it's lost. And a lot of people will say, well, respect is earned. He always used to have that saying, respect is given until it's lost, and then it needs to be earned. So I was very proud to be able to mention him in that meeting and again on the podcast today.
So, Hali, we're going to take the wisdom nugget, and you're talking about legacy from your grandfather, and we're going to roll right into talking about legacy today because we're going to be talking to the Executive Vice President of O'Neill Industries, Stephen Armstrong. O'Neill, we've been doing business with O'Neill for a long time and kind of getting a little bit of information about the company and the history of the company before we got started. Stephen, welcome to the podcast, firstly.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We have often we bring people in that we know a lot about and we know a lot of history about them. So we're looking forward to getting to know you a little bit today, a little bit about your story. You joined O'Neill back in 2006 as a financial planning and analyst, and then you're promoted to the sales and marketing analyst. You've been the whole gamut through the company, and I loved it. I love that because you get to tell more of the story oftentimes than some of the ones who kind of came in at the top. 2010, you became Vice President of Administration and ultimately included responsibility for accounting, credit services, human resources. Man, you have been all the way through. And now sitting in this Executive Vice President role, we want you to tell us a little bit about how you got started with O'Neill. And really, I want to know about what makes O'Neill Steel a great place to work.
Absolutely. So, when I look back on how I got to O'Neill Steel, it's an interesting story, at least it is to me. I began my career in telecommunications. I was an electrical engineer by trade, so as far away from the steel business as I think you could possibly get. And worked in that industry for 10 years and was blessed to do a lot of really great things. I did everything from engineering to installation and maintenance supervision to finance to strategic pricing, but it really never felt like home. It never felt like something that this is so energizing every day. It wasn't bad. They treated me well, but I was ready for a change. And I began the process of just starting to network, just starting to talk to people and say, here's kind of my background. What do you think? Any recommendations? And a friend introduced me to the CFO at O'Neill Steel at the time. Similar thing. I called her and I said, look, I'd just love to buy you a cup of coffee, talk to you about my past and see if there was, anything advice you would be willing to give me, I would love. Well, that, half an hour coffee turned into about an all day discussion. And she had a vision of things she wanted to get done at O'Neill Steel that really aligned with kind of my passion in terms of solving problems. How do we use information to solve problems? How do we make better decisions? And literally the next day she called and she said, why don't you just come work here? She goes, I don't know what the title will be. We settled on financial planning and analysis manager, but she said, I don't know what the title will be. We'll just figure it out. And I said, you know what? I'm in. Let's do it. And when I got there, well, first, which was really great, and it's a reminder of what we need to do with people when they start today, is she sent me to the warehouse for a month. Said, go out in the warehouse for a month, and came back and she said, okay, go sit on the sales desk for a couple weeks. All right, go ride with an outside salesperson for a week. And so after a 2-3 month process, I came back and was like, all right, I don't know everything, but I have a feel for what we need. And she had a folder where every time she would have an idea of a problem or something she wanted done, she'd write it down and stick it in the folder. And my job, she gave me the folder and said, figure it out. Figure out what to do with this. And to your point earlier, for me, what that exposed me to very quickly was every aspect of the business. It was corporate problems. It was on-time delivery in a certain location. It was struggling with, how do we know if a customer's profitable? Like, how do we look at customers? And so I was able to really quickly jump into figuring out how to solve those problems. At the same time, we had a new ERP system, so we had all this information. We didn't know how to use it. So I got to work with the IT teams and figure out how to give information better to our people and when to make decisions. And you asked about kind of the culture and that was 19 years ago. And I can honestly say I've loved every day. That doesn't mean there hasn't been hard days. There hasn't been challenging days. It just means I wake up every day excited to go to work. And I think it starts with, we are a family-run business, 103 years old, but our chairman is the grandson of our founder, and he comes to work every day, passionate about the employees, passionate about our customers, passionate about doing things the right way. And it all funnels down from there. It's just been such a joy to work for a family that is passionate about the employees and passionate about customer service and how we treat people. So it's been a great experience.
So when you mentioned earlier the person that you had started out for the short coffee meeting, turned it out to, tell me what her title was.
She was CFO.
Okay, so CFO, you meet with the CFO. We just had a guest last week, Chris Adams, and he talked about opportunities that came. Sometimes he went towards them, and sometimes they came toward him. And it's interesting how you went towards this. I mean, you were the aggressor in this opportunity. So as we're talking to emerging leaders, just a reminder that there are times when there's something out there, you need to walk over towards it instead of waiting it. So how would you speak to that leader? Kind of take yourself back 19 years to a younger version of yourself and just kind of modeling that out for the emerging leader that might be listening.
Well, I think the key is a willingness to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Like, I had a good job. They treated me well. They paid me competitively, a good pension, all those things. But I just felt I wanted more. And I was scared to death to walk away from that. But I think pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, when I became CFO at O'Neill Steel, when I was tasked or tapped into that role, I'm not an accountant by trade. I'm an engineer. So it's immediately saying, okay, well, how do I surround myself with people that can fill those gaps that I don't have? But, I think it starts with just a willingness to jump in and try new things. One of the things we talk about at O'Neill Steel is we love curious people that want to not only solve the problem, but they want to understand, the why, what caused the problem, how can we do it differently in the future? So it's pushing yourself to look beyond the task you're doing and be willing to get uncomfortable and be willing to admit when I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to try and ask for help.
I love the curious part of that because we're always looking for. Matter of fact, I would tell you that Johnny has told us when we first started the podcast, stay the curious learner. So as you can tell, as you're talking, we're writing, we're making these nuggets. We're writing down the nuggets of wisdom. Hali and I are getting a PhD in leadership. We're bringing people like you in here, and the wisdom that we are accumulating is moved from oftentimes ideas on this piece of paper right into the warehouse floor in this organization. So we appreciate leaders like yourself coming on and be a part of this. You mentioned O'Neill Steel and the longevity of the organization, over 100 years old. And, when we look on the website, we look at words like adaptability, accountability, technology, but the word that jumps out to me is legacy and how that has impacted you personally. But now you're part of the going forward with the legacy. So give me a little idea of the sense of responsibility you feel to carry the name forward. To this family has created just such a wonderful reputation, wonderful company. What part of the responsibility do you feel in carrying that forward?
Huge. I mean, I feel it every day. When I became CEO of O'Neill Steel, I believe I was the 6th CEO in the history in the 103 years. Talk about a weight on your shoulders of not wanting to mess it up. But it stems from, to me, the family, atmosphere. I want to do what's right for the family because they want to do what's right for me. And so it's really a relationship where, not that they put the pressure on you, but I don't want to let them down because they're just really good people that really care about this business. And, I will work myself as hard as I can to make sure that goes on.
There's something to that, though. I mean, there really is something to your heart to want to make them proud, and the legacy that they've laid out. It really is encouraging to hear that, because we are a part of an organization very similar. We had two brother-in-laws that own the organization. They built the foundation that our company has launched from, and part of our obligation, we want to make them proud. So, Stephen, the other part of your website, the thing that kind of, again, jumped out at me is technology. We're going to kind of drill into the leadership piece of this, but also the functionality of how O'Neill Steel operates. So when it comes to technology, how are you guys integrating technology into your processes, into your communications, whatever it be? How are you utilizing technology at O'Neill Steel?
In a number of ways. So not to get off track, but to step back for a second, and when you mentioned our culture and its adaptability, accountability, legacy, and technology was a later addition to that. We spent a lot of time really focused on, when we talk to people, who do we want to be? Like, how do we describe our culture? Because I believe we've been around this long because our culture is incredible. I've stuck around because our culture is incredible, but trying to define that. And so that was where we came up with this honoring the legacy, understanding that our success is built on other success that have come before us. But it's also, in a family-run business, we wanted to be clear that we have to be accountable to ourselves, to the shareholders, to our customers, et cetera. And then we had to be adaptable. We had to, change is all constant everywhere. And we wanted to really define that that's not just, we're not changing for change's sakes. We're adapting to the environment around us. But as we made this migration to, really one of the first e-commerce platforms in the metals distribution space with Pronto, and we started looking at our business, we were still looking at technology as a project. And we were looking at technology as, okay, if we give this new tool to somebody, they should use it. If we give this tool to somebody. But when we stepped back from that was really when we added technology we wanted technology to be part of who we are, and accepting technology, adapting to new technology. Also, our people know what they need. So raising your hand and saying, hey, if I had a tool that would do this, this would be helpful. Hey, if we could automate this, this would be helpful. Hey, I've got all this paperwork I have to do. Is there anything else we can do? So the adding technology to that was really to help clarify for our people that we want this to be like foundational to who we are. We want you to challenge the status quo. We want you to push the envelope. We want you to look for new solutions. So we have done things we've added, an e-commerce platform for what our customers do. We've automated the quoting aspect of how we quote processed parts. We found software that could help us do that. We've automated things in the warehouse that we haven't had. We've got robotic welders and robotic press brakes, at least in the portfolio of companies, O'Neill Industries. We've got automated storage and retrieval systems. We've given iPads and tools to our salespeople to help them have the information they need when they do a customer visit. So we continue to look for ways to use that technology to make the lives of our employees better, and to be able to let them be able to service their customers better. And
it sounds like this is part of the evolution of what
Absolutely.
Your company's going through. And we hear a lot about that, how we are going to use technology to evolve into the necessary needs of not only our employees, but also to our clients. And I'm curious on the e-commerce piece. Was that an in-out or an out-in? So in other words, did the customer was asking for that? Or was that more of an internal, hey, if we had this tool like you
mentioned? It was an internal belief that we needed to provide our customers access to information in a faster, better, easier fashion. So when I took over IT back in like 2011, 2010, we took a hard look at the spend. And we said, where do we need to spend this money? I pulled together a team from across the company, from our supply chain, sales, and we all agreed there was three areas. First, it was keep the lights on, run the systems, do all the back office things. Two was data, like providing information to our people when and how they need it. And the third was customer experience. How do we improve the customer experience? And it started with a portal. Hey, you can go pull your test reports. You can go pull the old invoices. You could do these things. And then that migrated into this idea of Pronto and offering a different avenue to buy from us. The goal was never and is never that 100% of people will buy on it. We've got great inside salespeople. We've got great outside salespeople. But there are people that want to order on Sunday night when we're not staffed. There are people that want to order at different times. And so we wanted to provide them an avenue. There was a little bit of a curve to get there. We had some really good early adopters, but it was certainly an inside out. People were not clamoring for that. But we've seen it grow to, we'll call it 25, 30% of the activity that goes through O'Neill Steel comes through that platform.
So is Pronto outside ERP that you brought in or that you created from inside or a little of both?
It's separate, but it's integrated with the ERP system. So it's fully functional. If you entered an order on Pronto, that same second as you hit enter, our salesperson could go into the ERP system and see that order. So it's seamless integration. And
we've had these conversations in our executive leadership meetings because we know that people are going on Amazon and they're clicking all hours of the night and they're buying all hours of the night. Would the industrial consumer migrate towards that? And there's no question that there is a segment, this younger segment of our industrial society that is definitely they love that. And,
yes.
and I think you're right. I think it is a migration. That's a really good word. It's a migration into that space. And it is a continuing conversation on how we make that available.
Yes.
But I love what you said. It started with the belief. It wasn't anybody that was clamoring for it, but it was a belief. And look, that's part of what leadership is. This is the nuts and bolts of leadership, and we talk about what leadership looks like. That is someone coming to you with an idea. We believe this, and then you as a leader have got to decide, am I going to invest in this? That's what leadership looks like. Believing in your team that they're going to bring me good information, and then we're going to say we're going to risk this and we're going to take off with it. So I think that's a really great statement about your company. Haley?
Weirdly enough, talked about legacy a lot. It started with the nugget and has just kind of gone through our episodes so far. As a family-owned business, is there a way that you kind of foster and continue those family values, even from 103 years ago to today, within your teams as you continue to grow?
Well, I think it starts with just doing things the right way. I mean, when you look at the values that we talk about every day, it's honesty and integrity. It's respect for others. It's not just respect for, employee. It's respect for others. And it is service excellence. So it's doing, it's being competitive and wanting to do things well and do them right. But it starts, I mentioned this earlier, it starts with our chairman. He comes in every day. He treats every single employee with respect, with appreciation for what they do. And to me, that's what, makes it feel like a family. We all respect each other. We have got the same goal, which is to service the customers and to do the right things. But there's no ambiguity in the fact that we are going to do it the right way. There's no question about the integrity piece. Like that is just fundamental to who we are. And so you have to constantly fight for culture, I believe. You have to constantly do it. If you get lackadaisical, you're going to look up and you're going to say, wow, things are different today than they were. And so it's an everyday, just making sure. I look at it from me. I have to make sure that every one of those that I do every day, because if somebody sees me not doing that, then they're going to think it's okay not to do that. So it's really just this battle for that. But I think it comes down to how you treat people personally. If you treat people the right way, want to see them succeed, and they feel that, then they're going to want to succeed and they're going to want to be a part of the team. And it does feel like a family that way when everybody's pulling for each other.
And what does the footprint look like for the company? So there's the holding the O'Neill Steel Industries.
Yes.
And then there are the companies under that. So what does the footprint look like and how many different locations?
So O'Neill Industries is, we'll call it, made up of 8 portfolio businesses. We're divided into what we call an industrial metals group, which would be people like yourselves, Caterpillar, John Deere, big, OEMs. It's O'Neill Steel, O'Neill Manufacturing, a company called Lico Steel, headquartered in Chicago, and then a software company called Stellasource. We also have a division that's high performance metals, that's nickel, titanium, those kind of products, big into aerospace and space, and it's TW Metals, United Performance Metals, G&L Tube. So that's how we're divided there, and that's a global footprint. We really follow the aerospace industry all over the world, wherever we need to be. From an O'Neill Steel perspective, we are really Dallas up to Iowa and east, maybe through Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not in the Northeast, but that's kind of our footprint of where we are.
So when you talk about the legacy, the integrity, the culture of the organization, is it a challenge to communicate that directly because of how big the footprint is? So how are you communicating, this is the company we want to be, this is who we are, and then kind of holding the line to that? How are you communicating that down to the rank and file, so to speak, the operators on the floor, the guys that are running the machines, that are cutting the steel? How are you communicating that to them?
Lots of different ways. And first and foremost, it's in your actions. So if you're consistent in how you treat people, I think that's kind of the fundamental baseline. They have to feel that they know, they trust what you're going to do. So that's where it starts. We get out, we visit our facilities, we talk to people a lot. We have sales meetings where we pull people in, and we always make sure that we talk about who we are and how we're going to go to market, how we're going to treat people. We do short video messages monthly from the leadership team, somebody on the leadership team talking about, yes, the market and the business, but usually there's some aspect of culture that we touch on too. Hey, here, remember, this is who we are. We call them reach screens. So in our warehouses and on our sales kind of bullpens, you can see messages about what's going on. And yes, there are metrics, how we're performing that day, but there's also intertwined with things that represent who we are, whether that's stewardship. One of the things that's very important to the O'Neill family is to give back to the communities where we operate. And so we make sure that we highlight those kind of things that reinforce what we're doing. But I still think it starts with people trusting that you're going to do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, I love the word stewardship because it actually speaks deeper. Even it shows a little bit of the responsibility that you guys sense it actually speaks to the responsibility that you feel in terms of you kind of owning the responsibility to go forward. That's what that word stewardship is all about. And I love that word. So we're talking with Stephen Armstrong. He's the Executive Vice President of O'Neill Industries, and we'll be right back.
Threaded Fasteners is a 100% employee-owned company whose mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. So, if you're interested in learning more about how we develop a people-centric culture, or if you're interested in a customized fastener solution, send us an email at culture@threadedfasteners.com. That's culture@threadedfasteners.com.
All right, we're back on the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, and we're with Stephen Armstrong, and we're going to be talking about leadership development. What is it that O'Neill Steel is doing to develop leaders? We like to talk about the emerging leaders at our company. They're listening to this podcast, by the way. So what you say is those words are being they have a little weight to them. So what are you guys doing to develop the leaders there at O'Neill Steel?
Well, I would call it a multifaceted kind of attempt to develop people, not only into senior leader roles, but also into manager roles or first level supervisor roles. So we've got some of those programs we've developed internally. We've got one that we call LEAP that we include everybody that becomes a supervisor goes through this program, whether you're at O'Neill Steel or one of our other operating companies. And that's just your first kind of intro to, hey, there's different personality types and how do you manage different people and how do you have really the hard conversation with somebody, what we call it the kind truth. How do you have the kind truth conversation with people? So we do that. We've got we work with an industrial psychologist that helps interview people before we hire them into any kind of manager role or above, really looking for fit. Do they fit our culture? Do they fit who we are? He's got that company has programs around accountability that we send people to that just teach people how to hold themselves accountable, but how to hold somebody else accountable. So those are two kind of foundational fundamentals of first level management. From there, we've got a program we call EPIC that we are launching that takes leaders from across our organization and really puts them through maybe a year-long program, obviously not a year straight, but a week here, a week here, a week here, that teaches financial understanding. Hey, we're going to spend time talking about how to read a P&L statement and truly understand what a balance sheet is. Because a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. And so we wanted to teach them the fundamentals of that. You want to teach people how we calculate productivity in the warehouse. So you teach them the metrics that we use to measure our success. We really spend a lot of time making sure everybody's on the same page about that. as you advance, we send people to a program that the Metals Service Center industry partnered with Washington University in St. Louis. It's called Strategic Metals Management. It's kind of a mini MBA focused on the metals industry. So we send people to that program. But I think one of the things that we've done really started in 2018, 2019 that has been extremely powerful is there's a program called the Thayer Leadership Development Program at West Point. It is a group of West Point graduates that bought the rights to the Thayer Hotel on campus, that they wanted to fill it up, and so they developed a leadership development program because that's what they do at West Point. And we have probably sent 20% of our employees to that now. And it has changed the language with how we operate. It's changed our mindset. It's probably, for me personally, one of the most powerful things I've done to develop myself. I mean, it talks about crafting your own leadership philosophy and taking all this input, but building something that works for you. It talks about intent statements and making sure you explain to people the intent behind a decision we're making and what are the key things so they can have the freedom to go execute without you having to micromanage. So that's been a really positive one, and we have plans to continue to send our organization to that program. And it's just been – it's really powerful, and it's been something that I think has changed our organization for the better, just in terms of language.
Yeah, I hear Hali say, if I've heard her say it once, I've heard her say it 100 times. Every culture has a language, and when we begin to develop a similar language, shared language, our leaders in particular know what those words mean. It really does become more effective in meetings where we're all talking about the same thing.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure, Hali, that we've had a guest on that has that much leadership development already underway. I mean, I was writing them all down, and I mean that's quite a bit of leadership development and stages of leadership development. So I mean, I would say well done. There's I have a lot of interest in particularly those outside brand leadership development, because oftentimes when we're saying the message, we're saying it in that hometown prophet thing. It doesn't go as well as if somebody else comes in and says it. So I'm an advocate of that.
Yes.
So I appreciate that you guys are doing that. Hali?
I've heard you, while I've always said every culture has a language, you recently have been talking about this beast of complexity. So with all of these different leadership programs, one of the questions that I wanted to ask, is it the most beneficial to have those external agencies come in or being able to send it to? Otherwise, how do you manage this many different types of leadership development programs?
Several of those we do internally. So LEAP we do in our office. Somebody comes to us. We bring our people together periodically once or twice a year. Accountability training is very similar. The strategic mini MBA, strategic metals management, it's more isolated. You send somebody there. The Thayer program is really the first one where we are sending large numbers of people out. The reality is once you go to West Point and you see the campus and they can talk about decisions that were made in the Revolutionary War and how to apply those to your business, you can't repeat that online or in your office. And so I have firmly pushed for you have to go to experience that. Otherwise, it just won't have the same impact. But there's so many lessons that they teach you there that have become fundamental. So I think it depends is the short answer to your question. I think things like that, you have to go there and experience the entirety of the project. But I think there's other times that bringing it in is okay too. The other piece that we always say is we want people to own your career. You own your career. So if you want one of these things, ask about them. We have tuition reimbursement programs. So if you want to go back to school, ask, talk about it. We will support you to do those things. If you want new roles or new challenge, ask. We want you to own. We don't want to take all the responsibility for your career on ourselves. We want you to own that, but we just want to give you the tools to help you do that.
That is a fantastic. I mean, I can already see that we're going to be working on your career into some of our language. I like that.
And I did want to dig in more to the language piece because while I was putting my research hat on before this episode, I, dug into your website and you use the 6 S's to represent who you are. And one of those S's, the last one actually, is sales. And that really surprised me a little bit because a lot of the times we don't talk about sales as a part of really who we are as a company. But on your website, it says that revenue serves as a tool to measure how well we are serving our customers and serving one another internally. So how are sales and services intertwined to how you measure success at O'Neill Steel?
So when I think about our industry, I'm selling the same piece of steel that there's literally thousands of people that could sell you that same piece of steel. And so what differentiates us in the market? And I think it comes down to how we service our customers, how we treat people, how we do what we say we're going to do, how we respond when there's a problem. And so, yes, we use it. I believe that as we grow our business and grow our market share, we've been able to grow our market share fairly significantly over the last 10 years. That is a byproduct of that we are servicing our customers, but just not our customers. We are serving our internal customers well. You know, it takes more than a person on the phone taking your order to execute that. There's somebody in supply chain that had to source the steel and make sure we had it at the right place at the right time. There's somebody in operations that unloaded a truck and then reloaded a truck. There's often questions that go back and forth, and so the communication internally has to help service that. So it's really a measure of if we're doing the service part right internally and with our customers, then the sales will come. You know, so the sales are the byproduct of that in my mind.
And oftentimes when we're measuring those things, particularly when it comes to sales, and I would say this from our sales, everybody's always focused on sales. You don't have to go looking for sales numbers. They come looking for you. When they're good, nobody has a problem finding me with the sales numbers. When they're not so good, I may have to go looking for.
You have to go dig.
Yeah. So sales is definitely one of those things that we always have our eye on. But I'm impressed by the way that you guys have framed even the quote, because it could sound a little greedy if you weren't careful, but the way that you frame this quote, it's part of the measurement. You know, it's really not about the money. It's about measuring, are we being successful? And so again, leadership, making a strategic statement about how you look at those numbers, it's saying something about we're doing it right, as opposed to it's just saying, instead of saying just what we're getting, it's saying that we're doing it right. So again, well done on how you craft your strategic language around that. So when we were talking, before we got started today, we talked a little bit about the legacy of O'Neill Steel, over 100-year company, but you got to take this thing forward. There's this legacy, and they started, and how they started. Oftentimes when I look back at the history of companies that are this old, it's fascinating to me. And, standing the test of time. We often get the magazines from chamber magazines from all across the country, and you look on the back, so-and-so celebrating their 30th anniversary and their 25th anniversary. You don't see very many companies celebrating their 100-year company. So how would you describe that forward thinking compared to, we got this huge legacy company, but we got to take this thing forward? How do you strike that balance?
Well, it comes down to communication. You have to keep talking to people about why we're changing, or the forward thinking. In my mind, oftentimes people will say, well, we're changing. It feels like too much change. We're changing more than we have in the past. We didn't used to be this way. So I hear it. We all hear it. I've heard it through my career. And so one of the things it's a blessing. Our founder has a book that he wrote, basically his biography or memoirs, as we call it, and it gives the history of O'Neill Steel. And one of the things that I did is I took that book and went through it and basically built a timeline of our company. And when you go back through that history, we are constantly adapting to the world around us. We were a structural fabricator when we started. Then we became in World War II, we made bombs. We were the largest producer of multipurpose bombs in the United States for World War II. Then we became a steel distributor. Then we grew into other areas. Then we had some manufacturing, value-added. So showing people that adaptability to what's going on around us and being forward thinking is our legacy. That is who we are. And for us to not change is actually not honoring the legacy. But that's a lot of that's going around and just talking to people, showing them taking them through the presentation. I did a video, I did it at a sales meeting, But you just kind of have to constantly repeat that being forward thinking is absolutely the legacy that we need to honor. There's a quote in the book, and our chairman now, Kraft O'Neill, says it a lot, and it's in Latin, and I'm not going to say it in Latin, but in English it's like growth has been and will always be the measure of our success or the key to our success in the future. And so that mindset, just doing what we've done isn't acceptable. And so I think by bringing those two items together is how we've been able to do it, as opposed to saying they're two different things.
Well, again, crafting the language around that, I think that is superb in the way that you're doing that, and the way that, and I was just thinking, the company that we work for today is not the company that I've been here for 44 years. It's not the company I came to work for. It has continuously evolved into what we are today. So if change wasn't, a necessary agent of success, we may still be in a little 1,200 square foot building with 6 of us. Yeah. Now there's 350 of us, and we're all over the United States. And we have come across those that would say, I wish we kind of could go back and how we did it, And I love to take those questions. I love to feel those one-on-one, because I'll kind of gently remind them the success of this organization. Look at all the people that we get to be a part of their lives. And we're serving over 350 families now, and that's all part of it. So kind of to pivot, Stephen, to more of your personal leadership, we love to ask leaders like you to come in. If we pull somebody out of the office at O'Neill Steel and say, what kind of leader is Stephen? What would they say? What would they say about you?
I've had that question before, and just being fair, I don't like that question because I don't know what they would say. I can tell you what I hope they would say. I hope they would say that I was consistent in my approach to things and behavior. So they knew what they were going to get from me with a problem or a win or anything bad. They knew that I was going to be consistent in how I approached that. Steady, not getting too high, too low. And maybe that's because that's who I liked in my leaders that I had. So I think that's one. I think they would say that I'm willing to make a call, make a decision. I don't get analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. I'm willing to make a decision, but at the same time, I'm also willing to be the first one that says that didn't work. Let's try something different. So I think those two things. And then I think lastly, and really most important to me, is I hope they would say that I care about their success. I want people to succeed. And if it's with us, that's first and foremost what I want. But I tell people all the time, if it's not with us, how can I help you? What do you need? If this isn't the place for you, how can I help you find a place that is for you? And I think that's important.
It is, and I think that's what makes you a great leader, is you have a heart for the people that you're serving with there at O'Neill Steel. So you mentioned the people that have influenced you. Mm-hmm. Tell us about someone on your leadership journey, someone that you admired, someone that you looked up to, somebody that impacted you on your way, on your journey.
Okay. Well, I've been blessed in my career. I've had a number of mentors that I really looked up to, but if you ask me that, the one that pops in mind is Holman Head. He was my predecessor as president of O'Neill Steel. He was at O'Neill Industries. He is a third-generation family member. I'll give you 2 examples of what he taught me. And he was what I would aspire to be in a leader. He is all those things I just described. Consistent message. When I had started, I was probably at O'Neill Steel at the time, 2 years, and decided that we should have an automated pricing system, like a software program that would come in and tell us what price we need to charge. And I went to him and I sold it and I pushed it. And I was like, we got to do this. And it was very expensive compared to even it was like 4 burning machines or something, and he's like, are you sure? I was like, here's all the reasons why I think. Well, a year later, it was an epic failure. Epic. And I had to go to him and go, look, we're going to have to pull this back out. This did not work. And he said, okay, what'd you learn? What would we do different? And how are we going to take some value from what we did? That's all he said. There was no, I can't believe we did this. There was no. So that taught me that, giving people the rope to make a decision, make a mistake, fail, and then move on. But ask them what they learned from it. What was different? What happened that, don't just let it go, but ask the questions that did. So that really stuck with me of just this ability to try things and fail without repercussions, as long as, we make the right decisions, smart decisions. The other piece was we had an instance where we discovered that a mill had falsified some test reports to us. We're sitting in a room, there's a whole lot of people, and we're talking about, this could be big. First words out of his mouth, he goes, well, go call the customers. And we're like, well, we need to, shouldn't we figure out what exactly? And he's like, no, Go tell them right now. No care for the cost to the company, no care for it was no, we found this out. And I still have customers today say, and I know other service centers bought this material. I know it was a what that still say we're the only people that told them and stepped up to the plate. And just that example of I don't care what it costs the company, but we're going to do the right thing has stuck with me, to no end. So he just really taught me those values that we've talked about all day, but he demonstrated them and just, gave me the freedom to just jump into them 2 feet.
And Hali, that's why O'Neill Steele's 103 years old. That legacy of doing the right thing, integrity. We had someone on our podcast last week talking about integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. There were a lot of options that could have happened that day, but leadership stood up and said, "This is who we are." Because it started not with what we're going to do. It started with this is who we are. So this is what we have to do.
Exactly.
If this is who we are, this is what we have to do. So Stephen, we want to talk to emerging leaders. Just imagine all your emerging leaders, all our emerging leaders are in this room and they're saying, how do I get started? What would be your advice to them today to get started on their leadership journey?
Well, I think we talked about it kind of. First, be willing to step out of your comfort zone and be willing to try something different. Get uncomfortable in those decisions and being able to push yourself to try. I think that's first and foremost. Second, don't be scared to make a decision. It doesn't matter what level you are. If you think about it and you logically have the reasons and rationale for making that decision, make it. Don't look for somebody else to make that decision for you. And I think if you start demonstrating those two things, success will come to you. I think you will get new opportunities. I think people will start looking to you of like, hey, that person's going to be able to help me. And once you start doing that, I think you will clearly begin to advance. I would say the other thing, because I had this conversation with somebody in our organization this week about him wanting to take, he's we'll call him senior-ish level, but wants to be able to take the next step. And I said, from this point forward, your key, how do you persuade people to do something when they're outside of your span of control? Like, what is it? How do you influence other people to do what you want them to do in a way where they see it as a positive? Like, how do you do that? I don't have the answer for that in every situation, but you have to figure out what that means. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to understand their point of view. You have to understand the influences that they have and really take the time to try and sell that idea or sell that process. But I think the higher you get in the organization, your ability to influence decisions, even if they're outside of your span, are what sets you apart.
Yep. And I will tell you that John Maxwell is one of our probably most quoted lines, is that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And how we influence the people around us, actually, he has a book, 360-degree leadership, leading up to the side and below, but influencing those people above you that you really don't have any influence over. However, by the way you ask, by the way you project, can influence those decision makers. Back to the software pitch that you made to the company that didn't work out, and to those emerging leaders, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. It is just a
so
fact.
True.
Sometimes through those experiences you learn. Don't stop stepping forward, because sometimes you learn in that. So, Stephen, lastly, just kind of what is a book that you've read? What's a leadership book that you could point us to, something that you've enjoyed or something you're currently reading? We always like to list those books on the podcast.
Okay. Well, to be transparent, I don't read a lot. I listen to a ton of books. I listen to them driving, running, whatever it is. So I listen to a lot of books. And right now I'm listening to a Stephen King book, so it has nothing to do with leadership. But two that have really stuck with me that come to mind. One is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's a Ben Horowitz book. I don't know if you've read it, but to me it is a manual of how to be a senior leader in an organization that just takes you through a gambit of different issues. The other one that I've read more recently that I love is called Turn the Ship Around, which really goes to that servant leader type situation of challenging people to be willing to make decisions and do those things. I love the quote that they use, or the language he uses on it's about a nuclear submarine that it was the least performing ship and he made it the most performing, but he used the I intend to statements. So people kept asking, hey, how should I do this? Or what should I do? And he said, no, I want you to say, I intend to do this for these reasons. And he would say yes or no. but that I intend to, it forces that decision making down in the organization. And I think that's been a really good one to read. I'll just add one last thing, because I've seen it. I happen to be interviewing somebody this week or last week, but the challenge, and I think what I would challenge all these emerging leaders, when you read all these books, they're all great and they all have great nuggets of things to do. But try to take all that and make your own style out of that. Because I think being authentic to who you are, based on all these principles, is ultimately going to set you apart. When people know you're being authentic, know you're not just, hey, this book said do these 4 steps, so I'm going to do those 4 steps. But read, learn, and then make your own style. Make your own leadership style out of it.
You know, I appreciate you saying that for this reason. I would imagine the first time Nick Saban's book came out about being a coach, how many coaches got frustrated in trying to become Nick Saban. The challenge is we don't need another Nick Saban. We need the best version of what coach you are.
Yes.
Same thing with our leadership styles. And I'm glad that you brought that up. We take those nuggets because, quite frankly, Haley's got a page and a half of nuggets here. She can read that line, and it means something different to her than it does to me.
Yes.
So for me to expect her to get it the exact same way I did, that would be irresponsible.
Right.
So I appreciate you bringing that in. Stephen, it's been a joy to be on the podcast with you, so I appreciate you taking time to cut out some time to be with us today.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Haley and I'll be right back
having
with some closing thoughts. All right. What a great episode with Stephen Armstrong, the Executive Vice President of O'Neill Industries. Haley, I've got 2 or 3 pages of nuggets here. I know I write big, but I've got them spread out all over the place. But tell me what you took away from the interview with Stephen.
Well, you said it in the episode. I do indeed have about a page and a half worth of notes, and there's so many different things that he talked about. One of the things that I liked the most was when he talked about describing the culture in the way of how do we want to communicate who we are authentically. That was something that really resonated with me.
And when I started hearing all the different things they're doing in leadership development, I was bordered on being jealous, actually. LEAP, EPIC, the different names, the mini MBA program that they have called EPIC, and then the leadership development at West Point, the offsite stuff. I'm definitely going to be looking into that. But I will say this, when he said that we encourage our team members in conversation one-on-ones to own their own career, I can see that working into some of our language. I really like the way he did that. That was a great interview. Actually, we went a little bit long, but it was really good and really rich with a lot of good stuff. So, Haley, till we meet again, tighten up.
Tighten up. Thank you for joining the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, brought to you by the employee owners of Threaded Fasteners. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to, rate, and review the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a leadership story to tell or a question to ask? Email us at podcast@threadedfasteners.com. That's podcast@threadedfasteners.com. This show is made possible by our family at Threaded Fasteners, Inc. Our mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. Interested in learning more about TFI and how we create value in our team, in our communities, and in our customers? Visit threadedfasteners.com. Thank you again for listening. I'm your co-host and producer, Haley Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duray.
This show is edited and produced by Johnny Glenn and our friends at Deep Fried Studios.